Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a scene-by-scene breakdown of everything you missed in Fantastic Four First Steps. Every Easter egg, background detail, Marvel connection, and secrets hidden in the music. I'm gonna break it all down in this in-depth analysis of the complete film. I've been waiting years to make this video, and I've been working non-stop for like the past 3 days, and I'm just so excited to share with you what I found. And before I get started, look at this awesome Fantastic Bricks shirt that I'm wearing with the little Ben Grimm spaceman that they worked in there. It's part of our fantastic collection, available exclusively at our merch store, nerdriot.shop, which is the best way to support what we're doing here at New Rockstars. The film opens with a new Marvel Studios title card, as Fantastic Four First Steps officially launches Phase 6 of the MCU. So gone are the flashing comic book pages inlaid in the Marvel Studios title letters that really started with 2016's Doctor Strange, with music also composed by Michael Giacchino. We did see a version of that with the character of Sentry in Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, but we did not see it in February's Captain America Brave New World. Now we just see a Fantastic Four themed title card that's real groovy. The letters of Marvel on zigzagging panels, a popular 60s title design that we also saw on Hollywood Cinerama Dome when it opened in 1963. An establishing shot shows us the Baxter building in New York City, which curves downward to extend to the Excelsior launch pad in the East River. Excelsior is the name of the Fantastic Four ship in this film, renamed from the Marvel 1 in the comics. Excelsior was the catchphrase of Stan Lee.
Excelsior.
And it's also the New York State motto, meaning ever upward. The Baxter building is the longtime headquarters of the Fantastic Four. In 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the 838 Universe Illuminati, and that Reed Richards worked within the Baxter Foundation. Text on screen labels this as Earth 828. This film is set in an alternate universe, separate from the 616 universe of the rest of the MCU. This is the 828 universe, a reference to Jack Kirby's birthday of August 28th, 828. It's also adjacent to the 838 universe, which is the universe that we saw of the Illuminati in 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. In this alternate history 1960s, Susan Storm's efforts through the Future Foundation have led to global demilitarization and world peace. Instead of NASA, which was a US government agency formed as part of the United States Cold War with the Soviet Union, the government space agency in this film is ANSA. This world also benefits from Reed Richards' inventions, which have benefited the infrastructure of this city, the design of the automobiles and the phone booths, with its impressive above-ground train line, which is also a reflection of them not wanting to build an underground subway tunnel that would piss off Subterranea, and the consumer products that you can see ads for throughout the movie, like the Hover Grill. The production designer of this film was Kazra Farhani, who did incredible work bringing the TVA to life in the Loki series, and every set piece in this movie is just filled with interesting attention to detail. Farhani and Shackman embraced retrofuturism in the design of this film, including the concept art of Sid Mead, to design this alternate universe Manhattan as really a city of tomorrow, the way thinkers in the 50s hoped urban areas would evolve into. This film opens right in the middle of the family drama as Reed Richards searches for aloe iodine for a wound on his shoulder as Sue Storm takes a pregnancy test. Sue says she'll find Reed's iodine in 12 seconds, which Reed says is a specific number, but she's really just counting down until her pregnancy test results come in. Specific numbers of seconds actually play an interesting role in this film. The brand of the test is Storkshire, one of the many in-universe specific brands we see throughout the film. Before shooting this film, Matt Shackman directed Marvel's WandaVision Disney Plus series, which also features a memorable pregnancy subplot and labor delivery in episode 3, where Wanda saw a stork walking around her house that a lot of us speculated was Mephisto. Oh, how dumb we were, but we had the last laugh. He's finally here, folks. The Fantastic Four was Marvel's first family, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in 1961. The Four reinvigorated the struggling Marvel brand at the time and spun off hit characters throughout the 60s like Spider-Man, Black Panther, and the Avengers. Past film adaptations included 2 Fox films in 2005 and 2007, directed by Tim Story, and then an attempted reboot by Josh Trank in 2015 underperformed so badly that many believe it's actually part of what led Fox to sell to Disney in 2018, which allowed the film rights to the Fantastic Four to revert to Disney, meaning Marvel Studios could reboot the franchise yet again. So, a Fantastic Four movie was announced on December 2020 as being directed by John Watts, director of the MCU Spider-Man films, but Watts stepped down in 2022 and he was replaced by Matt Shackman, director of the successful WandaVision series that launched Marvel's expansion onto Disney+. After a long career, going from a sitcom child actor to a prolific TV director, Shackman has proved to have a nuanced eye for period-specific tone and humorous family dynamics. Shackman has said a major influence for this film was Todd Douglas Miller's 2019 Apollo 11 documentary, and wanted to craft this film with the general feel of optimism and escapism that the 1960s space race represented. Shackman even used the real NASA countdown sequence audio in a concept trailer that was shown last summer at San Diego Comic-Con. Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, is played in this movie by Pedro Pascal, rounding out his resume after playing huge roles in pretty much every nerd franchise. Reed was played by Ewan Griffith in the 2005 and 2007 films, by Miles Teller in the 2015 film, and by John Krasinski in 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, in a short-lived role in the 838 universe as a member of the Illuminati who is quickly killed by the Scarlet Witch. In addition to his elasticity, Reed Richards is considered Marvel's smartest character. In this movie, Matt Shakman described him as, quote, a combination of Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, and Robert Moses. Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple Computers, Albert Einstein, the genius behind the theory of relativity, and Robert Moses, the great urban planner behind much of the architecture of New York City. Pedro Pascal said that he was humbled by the acting ability of his three cast members, and he said he got a little too into the mid-Atlantic vocal dialect that a lot of film and TV radio actors were conditioned to use in that era.
They had to keep on pulling me back from a very mid-Atlantic, early 60s kind of like talk. They had a dialect coach that was sort of going to help us into that kind of dialect. And I took to it so well that they had to pull, they were like, we actually, because I was like, well, welcome to the family, July 25th, summer 20, and they were like, talk more like yourself. And I had a hard time doing that because I was so into the era.
Susan Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, is played in this movie by Vanessa Kirby, known for her roles as Princess Margaret in The Crown and the White Widow in the Mission Impossible movies. Sue Storm was played by Jessica Alba in the 2005 and 2007 films, and by Kate Mara in the 2015 film, but the character as written in this version shows Sue Storm what I would say is her full administrative potential as the leader of the Future Foundation, a global peacekeeping organization similar to the UN that has actually achieved worldwide demilitarization and peace. Sue's powers include invisibility and projecting a powerful force field around people, around their heads, or around falling debris, or herself. Vanessa Kirby said that they did a lot of research into the way light refracts, and that's why her force fields in this movie have a rainbow effect going on. Light is being bent in a particular way to expose the full spectrum of that light. Sue tells Reed that she's pregnant, to both of their surprise, as they tried for 2 years to no success. Reed's sudden panic kicks in, and he says, obviously we're going to need protocols to account for the cell mutation, small enough for the cosmic effects, but Sue reassures him, saying nothing is going to change. This line actually gets reversed later in the film when the couple, in another intimate moment, laments everything is going to change. The mention of cell mutation and cosmic effects is Reed referring to how both of their physiologies were warped by cosmic radiation, but by using the word mutation, Reed doesn't know how right he's going to be, because their son, Franklin Richards, is technically going to be an Omega level mutant in the Marvel Comics. We move on to an ABC special presentation bumper, where the world is celebrating 4 years of the Fantastic Four, making this 1965 in this alternate universe. We see an episode of the Ted Gilbert Show. Ted Gilbert is played by Mark Gatiss, British actor known for many roles, including Mycroft Holmes in the BBC Sherlock series. The host's name of Ted Gilbert is a reference to Ed Sullivan of our universe, and together the names form Gilbert and Sullivan, the composer duo and opera lyricists who gave us the HMS Pinafore and Pirates of Penzance. Ted talks us through the Fantastic Four's story when they were astronauts whose space mission hit cosmic turbulence. We see pre-flight footage of the four of them on the ANSA test floor. ANSA, the American National Space Agency, is this universe variant of NASA, as it sounds like there isn't much of a Cold War-driven space race in this reality. Matt Shakman shot all of this footage with the cast in pre-production, as we saw it cut together with previs animation to form a concept trailer that was shown at San Diego Comic-Con in summer 2024. Shakman, for these flashbacks, shifts to a 4:3 aspect ratio on 16mm film to show how this is really archived documentary footage. Shakman would often switch among aspect ratios and television broadcast formats within episodes of WandaVision. Among the photo shoots of the flight crew, we see the team recreating the poses of Joe Casey and Chris Weston's Fantastic Four first family comic cover from 2006 that shows Johnny putting the bunny ears behind Reed's head. This will be the last we see of Ebon Moss-Backrack as Ben Grimm in his human form, because at this point the documentary montage explains how the flight crew ran into an unforeseen event, and we don't see video of that, only audio that Mission Control would have recorded.
Come in Excelsior. Come in Excelsior.
What is that? I don't know. It must be the cosmic ray.
So that's probably the exact moment Ben's physiology shifted into its nightmarish form. Reed explains in a talking head interview,
obviously, while we were in space, due to errors on my part, we encountered a cosmic storm that altered our DNA. We came back with anomalies.
Now, we'll dig into some theories as to why exactly Reed takes responsibility for this, but we now see the space shuttle floating in the ocean after re-entry, and Ben Grimm's rock fist punches out the hatch. Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, is played in this movie by Ebon Moss-Backrack, known for a number of roles, including Richie on The Bear, Desi on Girls, and David Micro Lieberman in the Netflix Marvel series The Punisher, which is now officially canonical MCU backstory since Frank Castle is in Daredevil Born Again, and next year his own special presentation and Spider-Man Brand New Day. Actually, Micro's surname of Lieberman came from Stan Lee's birth name of Stanley Martin Lieber. Similarly, Ben Grimm's Jewish background is a very big part of his character, based on Jack Kirby's upbringing in New York's Delancey Street neighborhood. Ben comes from the Yancy Street gang, who would later bully him for going big time and leaving his roots behind. Ben in the comics was a World War II Air Force fighter pilot before becoming an astronaut, and when the cosmic radiation results in his impenetrable orange rocky flesh, unlike the other three, Ben is unable to hide his powers, bringing him some shame. And so Reed Richards decided to make all four of them celebrities to take some of that burden off of his best friend. Let's talk about the design and execution of the Thing's look in this movie. Ben is given a thick brow layer that shadows his tiny eyes, similar to the Alex Ross rendition of the Thing. This differentiates his look from the 2005 and 2007 practical suit, which bulged out Michael Chiklis' jaw and made him look more caveman-esque, as well as the fully CGI 2015 redesign, which was an improvement in some ways that accentuated the cheekbones, but also they made the choice to make Ben naked in that movie. This version of the Thing has very small eyes, but the Thing should have a natural squint and a squashed nose. Big eyes would kind of be weird, and I would say Ebon Moss-Bachrach's blue eyes are just so expressive that they do need to come through in some way. For the texturing, they used a practical suit as a reference point, and you can see that in a lot of shots. The chunks of his skin on his arms and hands, they all just look heavy and bumpy, and a specific shade of orange that you would find on rocks in nature. The actor has said in interviews that they spent a lot of time out in the desert trying to narrow down the perfect rocks for the Thing. They added to the practical suit animation on his face and mouth, specifically noticeable when he talks. Like if you look too closely, you can make out a kind of unsettling tongue in there and teeth. But all of that I think just works better in the full package, specifically with the sound mixing. Like whenever he talks or sucks on his finger or something, you can hear that rocky clack of his finger hitting his lips. You can hear and feel the weight of this guy like he's in the space with you. Michael Giacchino's Fantastic Four theme kicks in. Bum, ba-da-dum, dun, 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 dun. Giacchino, known for composing the music of Lost, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, Inside Out, the 2009 J.J. Abrams Star Trek, MCU movies like Doctor Strange and Spider-Man Homecoming, and of course 2022's The Batman, scores a new iconic march here that he said was actually inspired by Bill Conti's score for the 1983 film The Right Stuff, which obviously Matt Shakman borrowed a lot of the visuals from in his space mission imagery. We see some of Reed's stretching abilities as he scales up scaffolding beside a launch pad that's exploding. At the end of this montage, he will kick an orangutan, which is part of a bigger scene, most of which that was deleted, that would have shown John Malkovich as Ivan Kragoff, Red Ghost, and his super apes, which include Miklo the gorilla, Igor the baboon, and Pyotr the orangutan, who all became super smart due to similar cosmic radiation during a Russian space flight. While John Malkovich appeared as the character in the first teaser for the film, Matt Shakman decided to remove him in what seemed like an 11th hour cut during test screenings. Since this scaffold climb and stretchy land by Reed happens on a launch pad, it seems like Ivan's mission might have been to hijack the Fantastic Four ship. We also see Sue and Ben working together to save people from an explosion on an elevated train line, and since it's all broken up, I'm actually wondering if that was another part of the same mission, like maybe Ivan Kragoff created a distraction for half of the team in downtown just to keep them away from the launch pad, and Reed circled back to the launch pad to stop him. As part of this sequence, we see the Fantastic Car in action. The vehicle has taken a number of forms over the years, originally a bathtub looking thing that was shown in Deadpool and Wolverine. This car takes a 60s sports car model with Fantastic Car written in cursive on the side, and the Ford logo formed by the door handles and on the rear. Ben drives from a larger seat structured to be in the center of the vehicle, since it's mostly an aerial vehicle and doesn't need to have right or left orientation for the driving seat. Ben is the most experienced pilot and usually pilots a Fantastic Car in the comics. I love how when it initially takes flight, it passes over a hovering robot that's walking a Dalmatian across the street. I just love the little world details every time we're outside to remind us that we're in a retro-futuristic world. A girl runs out to get her plush doll of the Thing, and this is actually a cameo by Macy Shakman, the daughter of director Matt Shakman. Shakman and I talked in an interview about how his daughter's birth was hugely influential in his direction of this film, something I related to as my son just started taking his first steps in the past couple months, and Matt Shakman said his experience with fatherhood informed what he said was the scene he was most proud of.
If there's sort of one sequence, and it would probably be Franklin's birth, that is most special to me, mostly because my daughter's birth was the most fantastic event of my life, and to be able to put that into a Marvel film and to put it in space in such a high stakes situation, I think I'm most proud of that sequence, and there are many shots within that sequence too.
Matt Shackman said that in addition to all the other practical effects that they used for this movie, they used 60s optical effects and on-set video projectors in the way they rendered the light of Sue's force fields.
We tried to approach things optically. You know, the Sue Storm powers is an optical effect that you could have done in the 60s, and that we use video projectors and things like that to create. So it was trying to find a way to ground it in an authenticity.
Later in the movie, we see how this refraction of light is used in a practical magnifying glass type of way. Among the signs we see visible in Times Square during this battle are 7-Up and Canada Dry Ginger Ale. The 7-Up sign nearly goes 7 down on top of this couple before Sue catches it. Squirt Soda, Little Caesars Pizza, Sub-Zero Intel, a movie playing at the embassy, Dear Margaret, a movie playing at the RKO Palace, a Lucky Charms billboard, a Lone Nomad sign, which is a play on the Lone Ranger, a sign for Hover Grill, and Aquaria Lime Soda, so busy you'll see stars. And we saw a print ad for this from the movie's designers, and this product is made by the Lister Alum Bottling Company, which is a reference to Caitlin Lister and Evie Alum, who were graphic designers who worked on this film. We also see Reynolds Women's Apparel and the Gemini Club. Another clip shows the four fighting Giganto, the green deviant mutate monster who's controlled by Mole Man Harvey Elder. So this is recreating the cover of Fantastic Four #1 in 1961. The visual we're showing here is actually from a Little Caesars commercial. The version in the movie is a lower angle that's closer to the ground. This backstory is one time we hear Ben genuinely say his catchphrase of "It's clobbering time." This, along with the sinking of the Pan Am building due to Mole Man, is actually explored further in the canonical Prelude comic. So this film is not an origin story for the Fantastic Four, but this Act 1 montage builds on a backstory that Marvel did detail in this Prelude comic, published on July 9th, 2025, written by Matt Fraction, presented as an in-universe account of the Four's origin by the Future Foundation. We learn how the Fantastic Four became celebrities after getting hit with, quote, a blaze of celestial radiation during a space mission that gave them their powers. We see them in the Oval Office with John F. Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy, and she's actually wearing the pink suit that she was wearing on the day her husband was assassinated. Oof! Reed decides to have the four quarantined at Rocket City, USA in Huntsville, Alabama, the celestial crater in Building Q, where Ben is particularly frustrated that unlike the other three, his body looks freakish. So Ben gets bad and crushes another version of HERBIE called HERBIE. Then they find out that Mole Man Harvey Elder has drilled up through the surface of Manhattan with his beings from Subterranea, the Moloids, and monsters called deviant mutates. Furious that the urbanization of the city has wreaked havoc on their underworld, the four combat the deviant named Giganto, recreating the cover of Fantastic Four #1 in 1961. Then Mole Man sinks the Pan Am building, and the four descend and combat the Moloids of Subterranea. Sue forms a force field around Elder's wife, and Elder surrenders. Elder, while in prison, says that he worked with Sue's grandfather, Empire State particle physics professor John F. Storm, who taught him, among other things, how to organize as a good union leader. Inspired by this, Sue works with Elder to broker a peace between the surface world and Subterranea, leaving the four on good terms now with Mole Man and his whole family. We see a collage of newspapers and magazines. They include Gardening Tips with Ben Grimm pruning a plant, Golfing Weekly with Johnny on the cover, and the headline Fantastic Four, Engineering with Reed Richards, Families Today, Christmas in the Baxter Building, celebrating 4 years of the Fantastic Four. Now this painting could be based on this Norman Rockwell painting of the Apollo 11 flight crew and the NASA mission control engineers who supported them. And then we see some newspaper headlines. Mole Man, the menace from below. Panic struck the Pan Am building. And then the photo shows the sign for Pan Am with the M sagging. Of course, Pan Am, or Pan America, was a major airline company, popular especially in the 1960s. This building theft was explored in the Prelude comic. In the upper right, we see astronauts rescued, heroes become superheroes, a mission to remember, and heroes we will never forget. This is a reference to their origin story, where they were hit with what was called celestial radiation while on a space mission. And then at the bottom, Fantastic Four defeat Mastermind Mad Thinker. So the Mad Thinker was a villain introduced in Fantastic Four #15 in June 1963. The Mad Thinker could predict future events to the exact second. Little was known about the Mad Thinker's backstory until he was finally given the name Julius in 2017, but he was really just a recurring foe over the decades, initially trying to break into the Baxter building and creating a robot servant called Awesome Android, but he was foiled by the mailman to the building, Willie Lumpkin, whom Stan Lee played as a cameo in the 2005 Fantastic Four film. Mad Thinker later teamed up with Puppet Master and in later issues with the Intelligentsia. Actually, a newscaster references how the Mad Thinker tried to sabotage the city, and this is credited as ABC newscaster William Russell.
When the Mad Thinker tried to sabotage New York City,
And he's played by Alex Hyde White, which is a big cameo. He played Reed Richards in the 1994 Roger Corman unreleased Fantastic Four film. In another rescue mission, Ben leaps from the Fantastic Car into the river and hauls a damaged ship into shore, pulling it by its chain. You may have seen comparisons online between this shot and shots of Superman and Man of Steel and Captain Jack Sparrow and Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Once he gets to the shoreline, he pets this doggo.
How's your day going?
I had been wondering if this dog might become Princess Masters. Princess Masters is a dog that was adopted by Ben Grimm and his wife Alicia Masters in very recent comics, the Ryan North run from 2023. There's no collar on this shaggy pup, and he's just kind of hanging out in a tide receded bank of the river. Please give this dog a safe home. I just think we gotta appreciate how good this shot looks. Like, you can't really see the line between what's CG and what's practical. And I think this might be because back in August of last year, we saw a set video from this scene where Ebon Moss-Bachrach was put in a practical version of the Thing's suit. And I think part of this suit, including the hands and arms and chest, were actually practical. And that's why it's really just Rocky hands there petting the dog, and the dog reacts to it naturally. But the head is all CGI. And I just like the blend of it. That's where the magic happens. We see a glimpse of the Fantastic Four cartoon that Ben references later, and we get to see the full intro sequence of, with Red Ghost in the final credit scene. There was a Fantastic Four animated series produced by Hanna-Barbera that aired on ABC in 1967, and it looks like they based the animation style for this series on that. We also see Johnny Storm on a mission to save workers at a power plant that has caught on fire. The power plant workers are cameos by Jay Underwood and Michael Bailey Smith, who played Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm, respectively, in that 1994 Fantastic Four film. Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, is played by Joseph Quinn, best known for playing Eddie Munson in Stranger Things and co-starring with Pedro Pascal in Gladiator 2. Johnny Storm was played by Chris Evans in the 2005 and 2007 films, who then returned in Deadpool and Wolverine last summer to play the character. And another Johnny Storm was played by Michael B. Jordan in the 2015 film. The Human Torch's powers are, of course, to flame on, giving him combustibility and flight. He's Sue's younger brother, and he's known as a jokester and a flirt. Johnny uses his flame powers to absorb the fire and extinguish it. He salutes these workers and then launches, forming a 4 with his fire, a big move that we saw Chris Evans' Johnny Storm do in the 2005 and 2007 films. Johnny flies past this billboard for Copper Tone Sun Lotion, Tan Don't Burn, with the 4 logo on the sun, and official sun lotion of the Fantastic Four. Johnny, wearing blue short swim trunks, has been swapped in place for the iconic Coppertone girl. That art, by the way, was created by Joyce Ballantyne, who used her daughter Sherry Irwin as the model. On this billboard, you can see how Johnny's body has been lifted away from the billboard on a separate layer to make room for the flame jets. You can also see little scorch marks from past instances the flames have ignited. So I'm assuming these fires ignite anytime Johnny passes it, which is kind of fun to imagine him on his morning jogging routine just to make sure he fulfills his contractual obligations to Coppertone for this. We see Reed hosting a kids science show called Fantastic Science with Mr. Richards, a reference to Mr. Wizard. He says,
This equation not only confirms alternate dimensions, but it suggests parallel Earths exist on different dimensional planes.
multiverse confirmed! While this movie doesn't explore alternate realities outside of Universe 828, this shows that Reed Richards' research is headed in the same direction that his biological descendant, Nathaniel Richards, will discover in the 31st century that will lead Nathaniel to become Kang the Conqueror and He Who Remains. In the comics, Reed is known for building a quantum bridge where he can peer into alternate dimensions and convene a council of Reeds with his variants. This film's production designer was Kazra Farahani, and before that, Kazra worked on the Loki series, and you can see some examples of some shared production design elements among the retro technology of both titles, like the spherical computer screens that might suggest He Who Remains might have built the TVA using his distant ancestors' multiverse technology. Either way, Reed's line about the multiverse here and alternate Earths is definitely setting up what we're going to see these characters go through in Avengers Doomsday, as incursions happen between these alternate universes. We see the Four handle Harvey Elder Mole Man's attempt to steal the Pan Am building, angry that the Four's rapid urbanization on the surface disturbs his underworld of Subterranea, and a really fun Easter egg here for the Pan Am building. They used New York's MetLife building, which is the structure in Universe 616 where the 2012 Avengers film plays Stark Tower, which became Avengers Tower, which became the Watchtower, now used as Avengers HQ as of Thunderbolts. So by collapsing the MetLife, they're kind of doing what VFX artists had to do to pave way for Avengers Tower in the MCU. Actually, the Prelude Comic shows a cross-section of the Baxter building and a quote from Reed, who regrets how its construction caused issues down below. The newspaper story stories about Sue and Mole Man include another headline about Ben Grimm speaking at the Heisman Awards. In the comics, Ben had a football scholarship to play at State University, where he had the nickname the Grim Reaper. But as Sue brokers a peace between the surface world and Subterranea, she speaks in front of the Future Foundation. While it's a UN-style organization in this film, the Future Foundation was originally a group created by Reed Richards in the more recent run of Fantastic Four comics by Jonathan Hickman from 2010 onward, a group of white-suited young heroes that includes their kids, Franklin and Valeria, along with Spider-Man. I love how the Future Foundation logo is made up of two Fs interlocking with each other in kind of a 69 pose. Hey, maybe that's why it wasn't working for 2 years, Reed and Sue. Among the seats in the auditorium, we see empty chairs for the Latverian delegation. We see the flag of Latveria from the comics with the green field, the black cross, and the logo that kind of looks like a Doom mask. Latveria, of course, is the home country of Dr. Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doom. So this is probably my favorite Easter egg of the movie. I'm assuming that Victor has already become the ruler of this European country, and he just hates the Fantastic Four so much he's boycotting the Future Foundation. Kind of like how certain nuclear powers are like, I'm not going to the Group of 8 right now. And we see this empty suit right as Sue says, quote, all participating countries agreed to dismantle their armed forces. So I'm guessing that Latveria is not participating in that disarmament. As of this taping, we do not know if the Dr. Doom in the post-credit scene is the Dr. Doom of this universe, Universe 828, and that Doom, or if that Doom is even Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom, I assume it is, or if Downey is playing a Doom from a different reality, that's a Doom in the post-credit scene, and in addition to that Doom, there is a second Victor Von Doom right here in the Latveria of Universe 828, and maybe the Fantastic Four just haven't met him yet. For now, I'm going to assume that Downey's Dr. Doom comes from another reality, or maybe another future timeline, and that we're going to meet a different Latverian 828 Dr. Doom in a future Fantastic Four sequel played by a different actor. I just think that if Doom already existed in 828 with the power to break into the Baxter building and create the ruckus he's about to make in Avengers Doomsday, the Fantastic Four would have had their eyes on him, the way Reed has tracked all other villains of this world. We see a series of thank you Fantastic Four messages from kids, from firefighters, and others whom they saved. One of these bubbles includes this grouping of four, yet another cameo by the 1994 cast, Alex Hyde White, Jay Underwood, Michael Bailey Smith, and Rebecca Staub in different costumes. Thank you, Fantastic Four. Ted Gilbert unveils the four on a soundstage set with the arrows pointed at the four, which is a reference to the Beatles' debut appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th, 1964. You'll notice the Fantastic Four in this movie wear blue jumpsuits with white collars and white boots, inspired by the 1980s John Byrne era, but with the baby blue tone from the Lee and Kirby era. Producers Grant Curtis and Tim Lewis said that for their suits, they used the specific shade of blue known as blue number 9. But you'll notice Reed's suit in this movie does not have the white top, and that might be because his suit all has to be the same specific fabric that is also able to stretch along with his body, which we see applied painfully later on. But there was definitely something removed from the end of the sequence, because lots of trailer footage showed the four on this set, just the four of them without Franklin, checking their watches and then running backstage past a cowboy and a cowgirl, then outside of the Fantastic car. The film's closing sequence restage all of this with baby Franklin with them, but that end sequence I think was meant to be a callback to a similar run that would have happened here at the top of the film, with the joke being that Ted Gilbert never gets a sit-down interview with the four. I think that would have been the four initially running out to fight Red Ghost or Mad Thinker. But there seem to have been other things removed here. Like there was a dating game sequence that we saw in the concept trailer that doesn't show up here. We also don't see the Every Sunday Night in 7 clip that they showed on social media all the time that would have been part of a home tour of the Baxter building. So we don't really get to see the Fantastic Four on the talk show yet. We do see Reed and Sue arriving home on the 20th floor of the Baxter building. HERBIE cooks a spaghetti dinner and Ben tastes the sauce.
I want to add a couple cloves of garlic. Not because it's not delicious, I just want to add a little bit of zip, okay?
Hearing Eben Moss-Bachrach's voice commenting on the sauce like this definitely feels like a nod to his character Richie from The Bear, a series whose first season centered around arguments over how to make spaghetti sauce and whether to even put it on the menu. This is HERBIE, aka Humanoid Experimental Robot Biometrics Integrated Electronics. HERBIE was first introduced in the Fantastic Four 1978 animated series as a replacement comic relief character, since the Human Torch could not appear in that show, since Johnny had been optioned to appear separately in a solo film. There was an untrue urban myth that claimed that the Human Torch was left out due to fears that kids would try to light themselves on fire. Later, HERBIE was given a role in the comics, and an origin is a creation by Reed Richards and Master Zar of the Xandarians, who intended this robot to help with the search for Galactus. There was a scene shot for the 2005 Fantastic Four movie that would have introduced another form of HERBIE, but he was removed from the film. HERBIE is mostly a practical effect, portrayed through a combination of a wooden puppet, a remote-controlled animatronic with a functioning head and arms, and of course some CG. CGI. And I can tell you that his head has rotating analog disc eyepieces and capstans that were repurposed from an actual 1960s tape deck that was used to maintain tension on the analog tape moving from one reel to another. These capstans, in this case, move in a specific way to change the shape of his mouth area. That could be a smile or a frown or even a Charlie Brown zigzag. And I just love that the shape of his eyes even allow him to kind of give off an eye roll. Herbie in this movie is voiced by Matthew Wood, the Lucasfilm sound editor and voice actor who also voiced General Grievous in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. I actually got to meet Herbie at a press event and we had a very long conversation that you can watch in this video. Seeing him up close, I was able to see my favorite detail about his design that the movie later shows, how his entire face is a literal tape cartridge that Reed replaces depending on if Herbie's in space mode or in home mode, like 2XL, but way nicer because 2XL was a dick. Later that night, Ben gets cleaned up for family dinner every Sunday at 7.
What are you doing?
What do you mean, what am I doing?
I mean, you're gonna ruin your appetite.
I'm hungry.
We're never late for Sunday dinner. Should we wait?
I guess.
Ben and Johnny are listening to the Oogum Boogum song by Brenton Wood, a catchy 1967 track that you might have heard in things like Don't Worry Darling. Ben picks up a box of Lucky Charms and behind it was a box of Kicks, and both designs are vintage designs from the 1960s. On the back of the cereal box is Jack Kirby's comic art of the Human Torch, which included the heat lines that Kirby added on Johnny's body when he flames on. The cereal box inside promises a free Human Torch figure. Sue and Reed are 1 minute late, which leads to some wordplay over the double meaning of the word late and what they're about to tell the others. Ben eyes Sue carefully and asks if she's pregnant, and notice Vanessa Kirby's reaction in the foreground the moment he asks that.
Are you pregnant?
Sue is a bit flustered by Ben's blue eyes boring into her. Throughout the Fantastic Four comics, there have been some occasional undertones of Ben having a thing for Sue, despite knowing it was completely unrequited. The fact that Ben can pick up on cues from Sue better than her own brother can says something. As news about Sue's pregnancy spreads around the public, we see a montage of the four and Herbie baby-proofing the Baxter building, which, you know, as a dad, you could wait until the baby learns how to crawl and reach for things. You don't really need to do it before they're born, but I guess they're assuming that they're gonna have a super baby who might just start flying around grabbing things. As Ben reads a book on baby care, the baby gate that Herbie puts up in front of the stairs causes Ben to trip down those stairs. I love how Herbie's panic scream and run could be a nod to him knowing what Ben did to Kirby, his successor, while under quarantine in Alabama. In the prequel comic, he turned Kirby's head into a Hamlet Yorick reference. A newscaster reports that the Yancy Street bookies are putting the chances of a girl at 4 to 5, but the chances of twins are a long shot. Yancy Street bookies, obviously referring to betting markets in the Yancy Street area. This woman is credited as Channel 9 newscaster Carolyn Haynes, and she's played by Rebecca Staub, who played Susan Storm in the 1994 unreleased film. While Sue and Reed do not have twins, they do go on to have a second kid in the comics, Valeria Richards. At the Future Foundation, we meet Sue's chief of staff, Len Nichols, played by Sarah Niles, whom you might know from Ted Lasso. Sue has to go invisible to avoid a conversation with the coal lobby. Then a Boston newscaster, played by Matthew Zickel, says,
"Will the baby be born with superpowers?"
setting up the big reveal at the climax of this film, what Baby Franklin will do with Sue. We see Reed's lab in the Baxter building. In an Entertainment Weekly set visit, we learn that the Baxter building has rooms that are color-coded for different purposes. Yellow room for thinking, red room for research with tables full of inventions, and then a blue area for monitoring. Each area is almond-shaped, matching the 3 almond-shaped windows pointing outside. The blue area being the area for watching. I'm going to reach to speculate could be a reference to the Watcher's residence in the Marvel Comics being the blue area of the moon. That's where the watching happens. The Watcher doesn't show up in this film like he does in the Galactus arc of the comics, but he probably is there on the moon anytime we see the moon. That's my theory. Reed receives a deep space transmission and has Herbie record it on an LP. He ignores Johnny's request for new suits. I like how in the background you can see Johnny's suit hanging up and it is scorched dark gray, showing how the flame resistance has worn down over time. Reed tests out a miniature of his bridge teleportation device using an egg as a test subject of organic matter. We could look at this as a setup for how they're going to use this device against Galactus later. Galactus survived the big crunch of his former universe by gestating inside of a cosmic egg. The experiment works here, but it takes up too much power and flips the breaker of the building. Johnny listens to the deep space transmission and hears 2 alien voices, an adult female and a young girl. In Johnny's room is actually a portrait of himself with a blue face. It kind of looks like it might have been painted by the Andy Warhol of the 828 universe. Sue walks in to find Herbie assembling the crib. I like how as Sue turns around, you can see Herbie in the foreground awkwardly twisting the screwdriver while staring at her leaving. Sue joins Reed in the research area for a sonogram checkup, and in a beautiful application of her powers, she turns her tummy invisible so that they can see fetus Franklin sleeping peacefully in the placenta. The music here is actually the first part of Giacchino's main Fantastic Four theme, which is actually designed to sound like a choral lullaby, and like most of the arrangements in this score, is set to 4/4 time signature, naturally. It's now Halloween time, and Ben walks down Yancy Street with a bag of Maisie's black and white cookies. These come from Maisie's Delicatessen, which is on the corner. In Mark Waid's 2005 Fantastic Four number 523, the Fantastic Four revert Galactus to his D-sized human form of Galen to try to get him in touch with his lost humanity, and in that issue, Ben takes Galen to a bar where a drunk waitress named Maisie hits on him. So Yancy Street, which intersects here with Suffolk, is Ben Grimm's neighborhood of working-class Jewish people from the comics. It was based on Delancey Street, the neighborhood where Jack Kirby grew up. Ben, in these scenes, wears a blue Brooklyn Dodgers cap with the old-timey B, which would mean he either stayed a fan with this vintage hat even after the Dodgers moved to LA in 1958, or in this universe, the Dodgers stayed in Brooklyn. This guy tries to get Ben Grimm to say his catchphrase of, "It's clobbering time."
Hey, what time is it? Say the thing.
That's not really something I say.
It's clobbering time.
That's just in the cartoon.
Actually, the first time the Thing says it's clobbering time in the comics was in Fantastic Four number 22 in 1964 during the Fantastic Four's rematch with Mole Man and his Moloids. Ben actually never said it before that point, but Ben does say it's clobbering time in the Prelude comic, which he gets some shit for from Johnny. In addition to Maisie's on the corner, the storefronts on Yancy Street include King Dry Cleaners, fresh as a flower in just 1 hour, Katzman's Hosiery, Gonzalez Bodega, manufacturers of the world's Latin American provisions, and Solis Insurance Brokerage. So this neighborhood is really multicultural, as many New York neighborhoods known for being predominantly one ethnicity actually are more of a mix. I really like that the production design made sure to note that here. We see this in a group of kids pushing each other in a version of the Fantastic Car. Really, despite the rest of this New York being so retro-futuristic and Jetsony and Tomorrowland-esque and Sid Mead inspired, this neighborhood has not really upgraded with the technology of the rest of the city. They have kind of stayed in their ways, and that is part of the interesting production design of this movie. You really do see the class divides in different blocks of New York. Other shops that we see include Stanley's Service Center, which could be a nod to Stan Lee, who did shorten his name from Stanley Martin Lieber, Horowitz Clothing, Kaplan Electronics, which could be a reference to the Jewish Kaplan family of William Kaplan from Agatha All Along, whose origin story picks up after the crisis shown in Matt Shackman's WandaVision. It could also be a nod to Jeff Kaplan, one of the screenwriters who worked on this film. We see M. Gable Books, and then Scheckerberg's Pawn Shop, a reference to Hiram Scheckerberg, a pawn shop broker on Yancy Street in 2002's Fantastic Four Volume 3, number 56, a businessman that Ben Grimm pissed off by throwing rocks at his store. And then Stern Taylor. You can actually see the tailor, who I assume is Stern, behind the It's Clobbering Time guy, and he does indeed look pretty stern. To impress the kids, Ben lifts a seafoam green car, which looks rather like what Superman does on the cover of Action Comics number 1 in 1938. The car's tag number is 9L91B4. I'm not sure if that's anything, but I love how Ben goes a little too far with the kids and faking like he's gonna throw the car at them, scaring them. The kid's teacher at this temple, whom Ben has a crush on, is Rachel Rosman, played by Natasha Lyonne in this movie. In the comics, Ben's birth mother was named Rachel Grimm. Before we continue with today's video, we wanted to take a quick moment to talk about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. To be real with you all for a second, making YouTube videos for a living weighs on me more heavily than I can really handle a lot of the time. Unlike a lot of jobs out there, my good days and my bad days are worn on my face. They're heard in my voice. They are unable to hide from the world. I cannot have an off day. I feel all kinds of anxiety over whether or not I'm working hard enough, or if I'm covering the news fast enough, or if I'm missing things or getting things wrong in my videos, or if I'm doing all of this in a way that burns out my coworkers or contributes to the overall erosion of public discourse, or if I'm just not hiding all of this well enough behind a perfect enough face on this channel to get this company the esteem and respect that I know it deserves, but I feel often inadequate in delivering. Or, you know, maybe I'm just worried about all this stuff too much that when I go home to my wife and son, I'm just bringing them a broken husband and a broken father. Whew, so obviously I'm working through a lot whenever you see this face, and I wouldn't be able to get through any of these days without therapy. Therapy can help you figure out exactly what's draining your energy, teach you to set boundaries, even with the fun stuff that you may be enjoying in these summer months, just to give you some practical tools to help you actually enjoy these moments instead of just pushing through them. BetterHelp makes getting started with therapy super easy. You just fill out a quick questionnaire and they match you with a licensed therapist in as little as a few days. And if it doesn't feel like the right fit, you can switch therapists at any time for no extra cost. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform platform you can actually trust to support you wherever you are, whether you're traveling all summer or staying busy at home or just trying to get through a workday being the best version of you. So if you're finding yourself empty, even during the most exciting summer moments, or if you just need help checking in with yourself, this is your sign to take a step back and really focus on you. Take this summer as an opportunity to reset, recharge, and start prioritizing your mental health, because you deserve to actually enjoy this season, not just like get through it. Head to betterhelp.com/newrockstars or click the link in the description to get 10% off your first month and start taking care of your mental health today. Herbie rapidly carves a pumpkin into a jack-o'-lantern, showing his own face. Johnny finally gets the Human Torch figure from the cereal box, which plays "I'm Johnny Storm, flame on, flame on," and then Ben crushes it and blows the dust in Johnny's face. Reed says he finished the crib and says it included 2 extras. I don't know why. So normally in the comics, Reed and Sue have 2 kids, Franklin and Valeria, but who knows, maybe in the movie universe there could be a 3rd child. Maybe Valeria will have a twin sister, and that could be what the Yancy Street bookie odds and the Gemini Club could have been like a setup for. Police helicopters hover over New York, part of Reed's plan to baby-proof the whole world and to monitor active threats and villainous organizations. Interesting note that this is kind of what Tony Stark does in Age of Ultron, use a fleet of Iron Legion drones to police the world, a suit of armor around the world, which Reed's upcoming villain, Dr. Doom, is gonna put his spin on with new mask, same task. He says that there's like a few dozen criminals that include 3 that he mentions: the Puppet Master in the Bowery. The Puppet Master, Philip Masters, was one of the first Fantastic Four villains from Fantastic Four number 8 in 1962. Ben Grimm's eventual wife, Alicia Masters, is actually Philip's stepdaughter. Puppet Master creates lifelike marionettes with super speed and is adept at mind control and uses various other tricks against the Fantastic Four. Reed mentions the Wizard in Gramercy Park. The Wizard, Bentley Whitman, is also a Marvel villain at this time who first appeared in Strange Tales 102 in 1962 as a foe to the Human Torch. He was a genius who would use advanced scientific inventions to perform as a magician, which gave him his name of the Wizard, but then he breaks bad. And then Diablo in Washington Heights. So Diablo, Esteban Corazon de Diablo, was a powerful alchemist in the 9th century named Saragossa who sold his soul to the demon Mephisto to lengthen his life far beyond the human lifespan. The Mephisto part was later established in 1996. But by making Diablo in Washington Heights, they are singling out that neighborhood status as a historically Hispanic and Latino area. Johnny tries to bait Ben into saying the thing.
Hey, what time is it?
It's dinner time. Get inside.
But their threat alert watches go off. Now, we don't know who's calling in these APBs, but presumably Reed uses some kind of automated threat analysis algorithm with an antenna on top of the Baxter building and satellites in orbit. But the sky opens up to a meteor shower. In the Galactus arc from 1966, the story actually begins with a similar atmospheric disturbance, but it's really a warning and protection cast by the Watcher to try to hide Earth from the Silver Surfer and Galactus. Johnny flames on to go check this out. I love the visual effect of when his flames pass the camera, little drops of condensation form on the lens, caused by the heat exchange of sudden extreme heat followed by sudden cooling when Johnny leaves. Things like this, plus, the clacky rock sounds whenever Ben claps his hands, just do so much to sell these visual effects. There's also just some really great shots of the Fantastic Car's headlights on the buildings that I assume were scale model work, and they just reminded me of the practical effects the Universal team used in the Back to the Future ride. As the Silver Surfer lowers down into the city, I think the most fun Easter egg in this movie were these 2 guys in the office of Timely Comics. You could see the orange sign at the storefront for Timely Comics in many shots throughout the movie. Timely Comics was the publishing company founded in 1939 in the Golden Age that produced the original run of Captain America that became Atlas Comics in 1951, and then they adopted Marvel as the company brand in 1961 when the Fantastic Four rolled out. These 2 guys are played by Martin Dickinson and Greg Case, and they are clearly intended to be a young Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. On their wall, you can see Jack Kirby's art renderings of Oog Lives Again, which was Tales of Suspense number 26 from 1961. Tales of Suspense being the other run where Kirby and Lee would introduce a lot of their characters during these years. You can see the Timely Comics shield logo taken from Captain America's shield from 1939. You can also see on the drawing board behind Kirby what looks like Giganto, meaning he is actively drawing the cover of Fantastic Four number 1 and really documenting what the Fantastic Four did to save the city. I see this as very Shakespeare in Love, Marvin Berry, Johnny B. Good moment, like showing the 2 creators of this whole world in a meta context being inspired by these plot events to dream up these characters. And Jack Kirby was known to draw himself into some Fantastic Four comics as the implied one above all. I just absolutely love the way this film continued the tradition of a Stan Lee cameo, but expanded it to include Jack Kirby as well. Bravo! Silver Surfer in this movie is played by Julia Garner, best known from Netflix's Ozark. Roll the clip.
If you want to stop me, you're gonna have to kill me!
This is the female Silver Surfer known as Shala Bal. The first Silver Surfer, the Silver Surfer from the 2007 film, was Norrin Radd. Shala Bal was first introduced in Silver Surfer #1 though in 1968 as the love interest of Norrin Radd. She becomes a Silver Surfer and Herald of Galactus later on though. Her backstory with Norrin Radd is also how Mephisto was introduced in Marvel Comics. We won't get into that here, though Mephisto is now finally MCU canon after being introduced, played by Sacha Baron Cohen, in the finale of Ironheart. Norrin Radd would serve as Galactus' herald in order to spare his homeworld of Zenn-La, which is also where Shala Bal comes from. It's also in this movie why Shala Bal serves Galactus. Galactus powers his heralds with what's called the power cosmic, which is how Silver Surfer can phase through solid surfaces. I just love the design of the Silver Surfer in this movie and the VFX. She looks so good. They maintain Shala Bal's teeth and eyes, the irises within her eyes, all these details visible but still rendered in a cold silver, and they just find a good balance for her hair, giving her the windswept look of someone whose board makes her travel at the speed of light. Silver Surfer says,
"Are you the protectors of this world?" "Yes, we are."
Reed looks over at Sue with a bit of shock that she would so quickly answer on their behalf. As Shala Bal speaks, the news cameras documenting this project her face on these big screens behind her, giving her an otherworldly size and intimidation, giving them a sense of the scale of the threat that's coming. She goes on,
"Are you the protectors of this world?" "Yes, we are." "Your planet is now marked for death. Your world will be consumed by the Devourer. There is nothing you can do to stop him, for he is a universal force, as essential as the stars. Hold your loved ones close, and speak the words you've been afraid to speak. Use this time to rejoice and celebrate, for your time is short. I herald his beginning. I herald your end. I herald Galactus."
So Julia Garner told USA Today that the part of the speech that Galactus requires her to say is, "Your planet has been marked for death," but that Shala Bal adds the part of, "Hold your loved ones close, speak the words you've been afraid to speak," as her own words, because she feels guilt and empathy for her actions to past planets. When Shala Bal says, "Speak the words you've been afraid to speak," Reed and Sue exchange this look, and Reed looks down at her baby bump. I think Reed in this moment is afraid to say that he is a flawed scientist and doesn't want his son to inherit his worst qualities. The way Silver Surfer describes Galactus as the Devourer, a universal force as essential as the stars, is partly a reference to Devourer of Worlds as Galactus' moniker from the comics. The speech though also feels like Galactus referencing his cosmic hierarchy, which would exist beings like Celestials. Like Arishem told us in the Eternals film that it was the Celestials' job to perform another essential cosmic service of building the stars and solar systems. So what Galactus and Silver Surfer are saying is that Galactus' universal force is to be kind of a custodian, a cleanup guy, clearing out all these doomed or toxic planets to maintain a balance in the universe. And as we see in this movie, to try to satiate an insatiable hunger. I love how this scene focuses on the dread of both the Fantastic Four and the everyday people out and about on Halloween. We see people dressed up as witches, including this one lady who made a witch hat out of a Wheaties box, probably one of the cereal boxes that features Johnny or the others from the Fantastic Four, something that I'm sure Red Guardian will be very jealous of whenever he meets these guys. You can see other costumes like this guy with a spider web hat. This actor's name is Cole Deller, and apparently Matt Shackman referred to him as Spider-Man when they were shooting this scene. All of the lights from the signs in Times Square create this really cool visual as they reflect off Silver Surfer's face and her shoulders. There's a light up sign for New Star Jets and a light up form of the Fantastic Four's Excelsior rocket. And then the building in front of that is topped with 3 ads for what must be shaving cream. And then a larger billboard that looks like it's for Citizen Watches, a popular brand from the 60s. Johnny, Sue, Reed, and Ben stand atop this disc that commemorates their battle with Giganto. We saw it in a set photo, and it reads, "On this place, on this day, the Four saved the city. A grateful city honors the Four on the 8th day of August. August 8th, 1961 was the original publishing date of Fantastic Four #1. The cover date was later in November, and that depicted that same battle. It's ironic that they're now standing on this disc commemorating their saving of the city in this moment that they're being told their planet is now doomed." Other signs that we see around Times Square, RKO Palace, the cinema marquee on the ground level reads Sunrise in Minsk. We also see the movie billboard Sub-Zero Intel. To the right, we see a video screen showing these little auto buggies, the velo jets that we see throughout the streets of the city. There's a sign for the best sandwiches in New York, and beneath that, Westview Appliances and Televisions, an Easter egg that was added by Matt Shackman, and I actually led my interview with him asking about that and whether I'd be okay to infer that there would be a Westview and a Mephisto in the 828 universe, and he gave me a polite no.
The only thing one should draw from this Easter egg is that I was honoring a show that meant a lot to me, right? And that I, in a new universe where, you know, we weren't going to bring in other Marvel characters, it was the one Easter egg I allowed myself was to put the Westview appliance in there. So you can draw no conclusions from that except just me honoring something that I loved.
We see the Forum City that's showing a movie called Attack of the Fungi, which has got to be a Pedro Pascal The Last of Us reference. There's a Miss Music store, the sign on it, a big vinyl LP record with instruments in the storefront. I feel like Miss Music and Miss Minutes might know each other. On the far left of this is a shot for Miss Elmer's Beauty School. Bethany Elmer was the name of an assistant buyer who worked on this movie. Silver Surfer exits and phases through both of the police helicopters, almost as if trying to prove a point that using the power cosmic, she sees all physical surfaces as kind of a suggestion. Similar to what we saw in the 2007 film, Johnny's first instinct is to give chase, ascending after her into the upper atmosphere until breaking free and running out of oxygen for him to combust with. Johnny grabs the board and she leans over the edge to look him in the face. We get this great shot where Johnny's face is reflected in her face. Shackman uses this reflection shot a lot in the film, like when Ben Grimm's rock face is reflected in the TV window glass, showing his original human face, or in another moment when Galactus's eyes are reflected in the bassinet bubble of Baby Franklin. I'm calling this the hunger shot. The hungerer is reflected on that which they hunger for. The fact that Johnny grabs the board here and spends the rest of the movie wondering if the board is part of her body is such a funny joke to me, because it's like he's thinking, did I grab part of her feet or like some other part of her that I should apologize for? Or did me grabbing it cause her to say this sexy thing to me? I don't really know how to process this moment. Shalabal says a phrase in her native language of the planet Zenn-La, and to me it sounded like Moha Kupiro Ame, that we later learn translates to die with yours, a meaningful blessing saying, hey, if we're all gonna die anyway, you might as well be with those who love you, because we later learn she doesn't get to be with the ones she loves. There's a fun audio detail here if you listen closely. When Johnny first looks at her face and touches her board, we can hear the subtle sounds of the beckons of her daughter from Zenn-La, the sounds that Johnny had listened to on the deep space signal, and perhaps by touching her, he makes that connection in his mind. The way Silver Surfer flings Johnny off of her board and then flies away is very cool, because you can see how Julia Garner and the stunt choreographers and animators really study the curved movements of surfers on waves to capture their motion. Like you'll notice in this movie, she rarely moves in a direct line. She's usually in more of a serpentine motion, unless she's crouched forward in a way in order to gain speed. Back in the lab, Reed uses the Herald's energy signature to see where she has been in the past, including planets like DA-773, ZU-935, JL-02, and a planet in the Proxima Delphi system. All of these have been wiped off of the star map. Reed plans on using this energy signature to track her next location. Johnny tries to explain the connection he felt with Silver Surfer, and I like how it just really started as a mystical familiarity and a curiosity, but because Johnny doesn't really have the right words for it, the other three just imply that he must have a crush on her, and only then does a real crush actually kind of materialize.
Johnny loves space, Johnny loves women, now there's a literal naked space woman, and Johnny thinks they had a moment.
Once he later deciphers her language, he feels personally betrayed by her. But because this is a crush, it's kind of why Johnny's subplot works in this movie. So this movie kind of needs Johnny to be a bit of a petty romantic. Reed says he doubts Silver Surfer is naked and calls her skin a stellar polymer. This comes from the understanding of Norrin Radd in the comics and his original appearance on Zenn-La, and the silver skin being a coating that he only gained after becoming Galactus's herald. Reed replaces HERBIE's face from a tape deck reading home to one reading space. I love that the whole personality drive is contained within one of these cartridges, kind of like old model computers. Reed finally finishes their new space suits, explaining to Johnny the gauge for flame protection. After this, Reed has a heart-to-heart with Ben, where Reed takes personal responsibility for their suits not being better protected on their first mission, specifically with Ben, because that's what caused Ben to have the physical scarring. Reed in this movie carries himself with a profound guilt for his curiosity and his ingenuity, hurting those he loves. The implication of the initial 1961 spaceflight is that Reed commanded Ben to pilot into what could have been an avoidable cosmic storm, just so that Reed could measure its properties from the inside. This section of the movie is what I see as the Apollo 13, the right stuff section, where these scientists go back into astronaut mode as the weight of their mission hits them. Reed's speech at the Future Foundation plays over all of this, and I love how the aspiration and hope of this speech so sharply contrasts the despair and loss of words Reed has in his speech the moment he returns. Like, side-by-side comparisons of these speeches is really what freaks the people of Earth out so much.
We will protect you.
Are we safe?
Are we safe? I don't know.
The four march down the walkway toward the launch pad, which is definitely something we've seen in Apollo 13 and The Right Stuff, every movie with astronauts, and of course, Todd Douglas Miller's Apollo 11 documentary, along with these majestic shots of the Excelsior launching and ice chunks slow motion dropping off the boosters. The people of Earth cheer their ascent ever upward, and Ben pilots the Excelsior to dock with the FTL engine, standing for Faster Than Light engine. I love this ship design. It seems inspired by the Endurance from Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, which was the 12 capsule radial ship that their lander would dock with, allowing them to travel the long distances. We've also seen Star Wars ships that dock with separate hyperspace engines, separate from the landers. The fact that Reed has already figured out how to travel faster than the speed of light is a pretty novel achievement that we shouldn't take for granted, because it suggests that he must have access to a kind of quantum energy source that probably powers everything of his technology, and is why the coal lobby was so angsty with Sue. The FTL engine opens a wormhole and they're off. The way space gets curved to open the wormhole, and many of the shots we see of the camera mounted on the side of the vessel were also inspired by Christopher Nolan's shots in Interstellar. Later on, the whole look of the neutron star black hole was a design actually invented by Christopher Nolan's team and astrophysicist Kip Thorne for the movie Interstellar. We wouldn't have things that look like this in movies without that movie. Matt Shakman told Empire that he wanted to make this film look like it was made in 1965 within reason, and part of what Stanley Kubrick did for 2001: A Space Odyssey in the late 60s was to rely heavily on scale models. So Shakman's crew built a 14-foot long scale model of the Excelsior for many of these shots. Reed and Ben track the Herald's energy signature to LH-275, a planet 13% larger than Earth. Ben asks, "What are we up against, some kind of space dragon?" I assume Ben is referencing their past battle with Dragon Man from Fantastic Four number 35. The end credit cartoon opening shows them fighting Dragon Man. Ben takes them out of FTL to arrive in front of LH-275, and suddenly the planet cracks open as the gears of Galactus's world ship, also known as Ta-2, grind through it. Ben pilots the Excelsior through the massive asteroids of what used to be the planet. Sue makes the ship invisible to try to hide from Silver Surfer, but it's too late. The world ship's red tractor beam locks them in, and Galactus's power cosmic scan reads the ship, locking in on Sue's womb. She reacts, feeling Franklin inside her stirring to pair with Galactus, and like it's nothing, Silver Surfer appears in their ship, saying, "Galactus will see you." Indeed, he is already seeing them. They land the Excelsior inside the world ship. The name Ta-2 comes from Galactus's home of Ta, so he calls the ship Ta-2 because it's really the closest thing he has to home. That's why he's so helpless without a ship. The four walk among the surface, which we see is made up of sediment when their boot leaves a 4 imprint. This plus the conveyor belts they pass are all part of Galactus's elemental converter machinery from the comics that actually does the work of converting the broken pieces of planets that this ship destroys into a molten form that flows through these tubes into Galactus's back. I love how this movie correctly shows how Galactus doesn't bite into planets like an apple. He uses his ship to break apart the planets and then uses the machinery on the ship to convert those pieces into a form that he can absorb. Like Galactus's armor, this machinery is all greasy, grimy, steampunk, and curved in a way that feels ancient and otherworldly. Like there's no off switch. It's so old that you don't really know how it works. It's a furnace designed to function forever. Shala Bal says that Galactus doesn't want, he feeds, and that she's the one who selects the planets for him to consume. She confirms to Johnny that her phrase to him earlier was a blessing, meaning die with yours. And her saying that blessing again here could be seen as her blessing him again, assuming that they're about to die in a few minutes. They arrive at an opening that we don't even realize is Galactus, for his glowing blue eyes just appear from out of nowhere in the darkness, and then suddenly we realize the shadow we see is actually his full colossal shape moving in the shadows. Now, a pair of eyes suddenly appearing in the darkness is how we've gotten accustomed to seeing the Watcher appear in Marvel titles, but as Galactus leans forward on his throne, we are able to take in Galactus's full scale, and it looks so good in IMAX. Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds, is played in this movie by Ralph Ineson, the actor with the deep voice, known for roles in Game of Thrones, the latter Harry Potter films, the creator, and even a minor role in the MCU as a Ravager space pirate in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. Galactus was introduced in Fantastic Four numbers 48, 49, and 50 from 1965 to 1966, also known as the Galactus Arc. The Watcher arrives from the blue area of the moon to warn the Fantastic Four by creating atmospheric disturbances to cloak the planet, but Silver Surfer breaks through and alerts Galactus, and while Galactus assembles his world-devouring device aboard his ship Ta-2, Johnny Storm recovers the ultimate nullifier from deep space and uses that device as leverage for Galactus to leave Earth alone. Galactus became one of the all-time best and scariest villains in Marvel Comics, later given a backstory in the comics as Gallon of Ta, a traveler from the previous 6th iteration of the universe. He survived the apocalypse post-apocalyptic end of that era of the universe, what was called the Big Crunch, by gestating inside of what was called a cosmic egg. And then when the current 7th iteration of the universe dawned with the Big Bang, he hatched out of this cosmic egg to become known as Galactus, a cosmic caretaker who goes planet by planet, devouring it by transforming that planet into a consumable matter. The Earth X comics actually established that Galactus targets planets that contain celestial embryos, but that motive isn't necessarily the case in the official canon. In my interview with director Matt Shakman, he talked about the techniques they used to shoot Galactus in this film.
How did you go about shooting this with a smaller miniature set, and like, who all wore the suit in the film? Was it just Ralph? Did anyone else wear the suit? Did it go to anyone's head? Did anyone, being that big compared to a city, did it go to their head to become like a god complex situation?
As far as I know, only Ralph wore it. We didn't have any stunt double action. He did everything himself while wearing the suit. Having him there, putting him in that suit was great for all of us, being able to film him for real as opposed to, mocap. We used some mocap in the film, but Ralph shot pretty much everything in that suit. It just allowed Galactus to come to life, and it's an amazing performance from Ralph that drives it. And we filmed him the way you film a miniature, which is you flood it with light. You try to make everything in focus, because when you film Mount Rushmore, everything's in focus. But when you film a face like this, things fall off. The ears are not as sharp as the nose, and the eyes are sharp, that kind of thing. So we needed him to feel like he was enormous, and that's how we did it. But then you also needed scale cues, right? You need the little Fantastic Four in there to show you just how big he is. And, we built a throne for him, which, he could sit in, he could interact with, that was really gorgeous. But the world ship is built at Galactus' scale, so it was impossible to build the whole world ship. So we built large sections of it, and then, of course, a lot of VFX to flesh it out and to expand it.
As Galactus leans forward, huge tubes connect to portals on the back of his armor, which is something that Reed and Johnny smartly clock, because this is how Galactus feeds on the remains of LH-275 that was just destroyed. Johnny will blow these up so that they can escape, and later in the final battle, Reed uses an antenna as a lever, an Archimedean lever you could say, to wedge these portals open as one possible way to make Galactus bleed. Galactus says to them,
"I was once little like you, billions of years ago, a man from another world, before this relentless eternal hunger."
This is Galactus hinting at his backstory as Gallon of Ta from a previous universe before the Big Bang, 14 billion years in the past. But it sounds like in this movie universe, after he emerged into the new universe, that survival left him with a kind of curse of hunger. He goes on to say,
"You carry the power to save the world. Inside her, the child. He hungers. I will spare your world in exchange for the boy. He possesses the power cosmic, and he will inherit this cursed throne."
In these lines, Shalabal suddenly turns to look at Galactus surprised. I love this detail because it shows how Galactus did not share this information with her, and she feels a bit of betrayal over that. I see this moment as the first seed of the heroism she will later show in the final battle. Reed denies that the baby has this power, but Galactus snaps,
"He hides his nature from you."
So Franklin Richards in the comics isn't known to have the power cosmic, and the power cosmic isn't really depicted as a throne with successors, but I do think this is a way of saying that Franklin could be an anchor being, an individual with the weight of an entire universe's existence on their shoulders. Franklin Richards is going to be a very important figure. He in the comics is a powerful Omega level mutant and a reality warper who at one point commands Galactus as his own herald when they fight the Mad Celestials from another dimension. Franklin goes, "To me, my Galactus." So they do kind of have a connection in Jonathan Hickman's era of the comics that Marvel seems to be relying on for Phase 6. Could it be possible that Fetus Franklin could be sentient enough to hide any nature from his parents? Or is there some other kind of divine sentience beyond Franklin's awareness that hides the power cosmic from anyone trying to observe it? Or could Galactus just be saying this to try to alienate Reed and Sue from their child to make it easier for them to part from him? Either way, what Galactus is offering here is the classic Abraham and Isaac test. Sacrifice your firstborn son to me, the son you struggled to conceive after years of trying, which perfectly befits Galactus as a dispassionate Old Testament god. Galactus uses the power cosmic to trigger Sue's labor prematurely. He promises,
"I will eat your planet slowly while your child watches."
He is just being cruel, and I love that about him. The sequence that follows is one of the most thrilling multi-act sequences we have ever seen in the MCU. As Johnny damages the feeding tubes, the others now have to evade the molten deluge of the planet they just watched die. Ben tackles Silver Surfer saying, "No, you don't." And Johnny realizes the board's not part of her body. Sue, despite being in labor, goes a bit apeshit on Silver Surfer, suffocating her a little bit, and suffocating her despite the fact that I don't think there's breathable air in this place. So they retreat to the Excelsior, and as Ben smashes back into the FTL, Silver Surfer reaches in at Sue's womb, and her fingers phase through the skin. And now we kind of regret Sue showing us Franklin inside her womb because we're worried that that kid just got poked in the eye. They jump into a wormhole, and Johnny reluctantly takes the gunner's seat, but the wormhole bends the beams. And I just love the detail of Shalabal acting like she's been here before by pressing her body against the wall of the tunnel to evade the beam. At this point, we hear Michael Giacchino's mix in the Silver Surfer theme with a series of choir vocals chanting, or whatever it is. I am assuming it's part of the Zenn-La language. They approach a neutron star in the process of becoming a black hole. The imagery here of the event horizon and the ring of space debris that they coast along is just more interstellar imagery, and it looks incredible. Reed plans to trick Silver Surfer into flying into this black hole using time dilation to give them some time. Sue gets a great joke in here about dilation, saying, "Is it more than mine?" There's some quick astrophysics at work here, but basically a few things happen in the proximity of black holes. One is spaghettification, where an object going into the black hole appears to stretch into a single straight line. Another effect is time dilation. The immense gravity of black holes affect the space-time of everything around it, meaning time for you near a black hole moves faster, while time further away from a black hole moves slower. We saw this concept in Interstellar, where Miller's planet, located near a black hole, experienced time dilation so that every hour spent on that planet was 7 years back on Earth. So, in the short amount of time it'll take Silver Surfer to break free of this black hole, they'll get a month back on Earth to come up with a plan. And I love how they trick Silver Surfer by using the blinding light of the event horizon, and Sue making the Excelsior turn invisible while leaving the FTL engines visible, so Shalabal doesn't realize that until it's too late, and spaghettification. Reed tells Sue, "You need gravity to push," and Ben uses a slingshot maneuver around the neutron star. The Apollo 13 crew famously had to use a lunar slingshot to get back home to Earth after the shuttle was damaged. They also do a lunar slingshot in movies like Armageddon, and a slingshot around Earth in The Martian. Reed says that they need to hit 0.88 the speed of light, which has to be a reference to the magic number of 88 miles per hour in Back to the Future to break through space-time that way. What follows is what I think is a master class of camera work, editing, and music, as the push that Ben gives to crank the Excelsior into the proper speed match cuts with the pushes Sue has to give, using the gravity of the craft's propulsion, making a harmonious mix of technology and really what is the most magical process of the human experience. And I say that as a dad, because I don't know if all moms out there would call it magical. I mean, yes, it is magical, but I'm just saying, you guys have a different experience than I do. And I just love how the moment the ship breaches into the wormhole is the exact moment the baby crowns and breaches and delivers. It's hard not to watch this as a parent and get emotional. And I can't think of a cooler origin for a character who's going to be such an important figure to the future of the MCU. This epic sequence ends in a quiet moment of reverence. Sue names the baby Franklin, which was the name of her father, Franklin Storm. The Excelsior's return to Earth is covered by WHIH News. That's the fictional MCU in-universe news service that apparently also exists in the 828 universe. They're immediately forced into a press conference.
Could you take us through how you defeated Galactus?
We didn't.
Not yet.
They're all in such a state of shock that they struggle to regain their media savvy and mistakenly assume that refusing to sacrifice their kid would be judged as the right decision by everybody else.
Are we safe? Are we safe? I don't know.
Back on the world ship, Silver Surfer tells Galactus, but he's just a baby, and Galactus chokes her. This is another clue of Shalabal's origin. She had to leave behind a daughter on Zenn-La. Back in the Baxter building, the four brainstorm. Struggling for a solution, Reed writes Archimedes' law of levers. E multiplied by R equals lowercase l multiplied by lowercase r. E is the effort force, R is the effort arm, the distance from the fulcrum to the effort, L is the load, and R is the load arm, as in the distance from the fulcrum to the load. And Reed paraphrases Archimedes' line about this. Give me a lever and a place to stand and I will move the Earth. Meanwhile, Galactus passes Jupiter, which is fun because in the 2007 movie, we saw Galactus' shadow passing Saturn. Now, yes, it is unlikely that all the planets on the way to Earth would be in perfect alignment like this, but you know, it is just a good visual countdown that works for the viewer. News broadcasts mention a Galactus cult that plans to summit Everest. I love this world detail because yeah, there would be cults on Earth that would be springing up in response to things like Galactus or Thanos Thanos for that matter. My theory for the "Let Us Be Devoured" song in the credits was that song was written by some kooky person who was a member of this cult. Ben passes a few hooligans who ask him, "What about us? We're families too." This is the Yancy Street gang, the gang from Ben's home neighborhood in the comics who would bully him. Sue and Reed end up arguing about Reed trying to rationalize the protesters' demand, and we get this awesome argument between the married couple, born really out of sleep deprivation, but also Reed's logical fatalism. He says what might be one of my favorite lines in the movie: "You're right, that is me. I don't dream. I don't wonder. I invite the worst possible thing in my head to figure out how to hurt them before they hurt anyone else." It is rare we get to hear this good of an encapsulation of a Marvel character in a single line of dialogue. Yes, there was also "I can do this all day." There was "I see a suit of armor around the world." There was "When you can do the things that I can but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you." But this line from Reed Richards is now, in my opinion, on that Mount Rushmore. The phrase "I don't dream" might be some sleep deprivation talking, but I'm reminded of Luthen Rael's "I share my dreams with ghosts, and I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them." Reed is haunted by his genius. It's not free or fun to live in his mind. Sue takes Franklin out to see the protesters. We see signs like "Earth believed in you," and we hear a woman shouting, "You're selfish!" Sue explains how their parents were in a car accident and their mother died, but their father survived, referencing the death of her mother Mary in the comics, which led to their father drinking and gambling due to his depression. She remembers her mom saying, "Susie, I would move heaven and earth for you," which stirs something in Reed, and she promises, "I will not sacrifice my child for this world, but I will not sacrifice this world for my child." It's such a simple bit of rhetoric, but it works really well, and the crowd is now behind her. Reed connects Sue's sentiment here back to his Archimedes lever nerdy detail to synthesize a plan to use his bridge teleporter to move the Earth. Yes, I'm sure you all connected to Ben Linus using a different kind of lever and electromagnetism to move the island in Lost, but in that case it was through time. Reed explains his plan to the public, demonstrating by teleporting an egg and saying the only difference between a planet and an egg is scale, which is an interesting statement considering Celestials use many planets as eggs. Reed plans to teleport the Earth to a solar system within a 2% margin of the habitable zone. He claims Galactus won't be able to find them for millions of years. I think the idea is if Galactus were to find them before that, they could teleport again and stay a step ahead of him, but I have another video coming out in a few days that talks about where Reed actually might have tried to send them and where Reed ends up sending Galactus. I think it might be the solar system of the planet Spire, the planet that he was originally trying to investigate on their initial space flight. The worldwide effort to construct teleportation bridges in this movie in cities around the world reminds me of the construction of the wormhole opening machine in the movie Contact, or the international cooperation we saw in movies like The Martian and Independence Day. It's just fun to see the world working together on this. Among the materials Sue asks for is plutonium-239, which is the radioactive isotope used in nuclear weapons and some nuclear reactors. And since there has been global disarmament in this world, it tells us that Reed's devices might use a type of nuclear fission or fusion. Either way, since it's all within a month, Reed must have some kind of rapid enrichment process. Reed spends his nights double-checking the math. Among his chalkboard equations in this part of the movie is what appears to be an Einstein-Rosen bridge or a wormhole that connects 2 points in space. Reed labeled this diagram as another universe and the portals as enter and exit. There's also a textbook Penrose diagram, which is a hexagonal configuration with 2 diamonds and a squiggly line at the top and bottom, top for black hole and bottom for white hole. In theoretical physics, this is another way to conceive of bending of space-time around black holes and a possible way to connect to a parallel universe. So while Reed's teleportation plan, first for Earth and then later for Galactus alone, is to really just teleport to a far distance within this single universe, he is theorizing that it is possible that by opening these portals, he could lead to another universe altogether. Just important background information as we look ahead to the rest of the multiverse saga and incursions. A worldwide energy curfew is put in place, resulting in Ben's rock shaver going out mid-shave. Ben does get a rock beard at one point in the comics, in Fantastic Four number 605 in 2012 by Jonathan Hickman and Ron Harney, but only after like thousands of years into the future. He looks pretty good with a beard, I'll say, because it kind of balances out the top half of his face with the bottom. Another scene that hits hard for the dads out there, Reed tells his baby, "There's something wrong with me. There always has been. The more I look at you, the less I know. And the less I know, the more scared I am. So you know what? I'm not gonna look anymore. I'm gonna let you tell me who you are." Galactus passes Mars, and we see bridge devices built in Paris and beside the pyramids of Giza. The lights go out in Rome, and we know of other devices built in Delhi, London, Chicago, Sydney, Prague, Tokyo, and Lagos in Nigeria. The world ship passes the moon, and we see a Future Foundation flag planted, meaning that by 1965, Reed Richards has made it to the moon 4 years before NASA did in our reality. But this guy also has FTL capability in 1965, so it's not even close. The devices connect worldwide, and it looks like it's gonna work, but then, oh shit, Silver Surfer crashes the party, gliding from bridge to blow them up. We see Sydney going down. She also takes out this offshore platform, which then leads to her to actually surf on the ocean water. Johnny hits Silver Surfer with the audio messages from Zenn-La and calls her by her name, Shalabal, and speaks in her language. He says her people were looking for her to thank her. We flash back to Shalabal on the planet Zenn-La, a beach with at least 3 moons in the sky, which could be a reference to the gods of the Zenn-La culture, Thran, Iraz, and Siri Ulal. And she has a daughter. In the Silver Surfer 2014 run, Norrin Radd sees all of his possible futures, including one future with Shalabal where they have a daughter. Johnny names other planets that she let die: Proxima Delphi, Seganus, and Polaris. Now, Seganus and Polaris are both stars in our real-world cosmos, so I assume he's saying that there were habitable planets in those solar systems that were destroyed. Reed's backup plan is to lure Galactus into a bridge to teleport Galactus to the far edges of the universe where he will be stranded. And he says that they could leave the portal open for 37 seconds. Fantastic Four First Steps is the 37th film of Marvel Studios. They have to use Franklin as bait, but to keep people from dying in their buildings in the city, they enlist Harvey Elder, Mole Man, and Paul Walter Hauser takes over the movie in this moment. He's so funny. He calls all the people of the surface world sunshiners, and he has to adjust to the light in the building. He clumsily breaks Reed's egg teleporter, and Harvey talks some major shit to Reed and Johnny, telling Johnny, "Don't be mad, I didn't dress you." It's not just a dig at Johnny's fashion, but really a reminder that Reed's spacesuits weren't cosmic radiation resistant enough. The people of New York are evacuated to Subterranea on buses, and we hear the voice of a newscaster paraphrase the famous words of cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that it ever has." In addition to being an aspirational movie about like space exploration, it's also aspirational in terms of just civic responsibility. Galactus arrives. He leaps down from his world ship into the upper New York Bay by Liberty Island. A tidal wave floods the battery. Galactus looks down at the Statue of Liberty. He seems to find it amusing that this statue that's smaller than him is something that all these other bugs would look up to. Galactus steps up into Battery Park and grabs a big old handful of trees and dirt to sniff it, kind of like a tracker getting sense of the terrain. I love the scale model work here on this side view of the feet walking by. This is a miniature set. Notice the wobble of the lampposts, the cars, the traffic cones. All these things are less than 5 centimeters tall in reality. Shooting it this way isn't just how they would have done it in the 60s, it also makes the movement feel more tangible and real, especially once the little details of the VFX of the falling debris is added. And I love how on all the boarded up windows around the city, you see things tagged in paint like, "We are not afraid," and "Thank you, Fantastic Four," which is so sweet. All the people of this town are leaving little yous to Galactus. Galactus passes a building called the Greenwood Hotel, which could be a reference to Silver Surfer related characters Dawn Greenwood and her twin sister Eve Greenwood. Similar to how they fooled the Silver Surfer, they try to attack Galactus's visibility first. There's this really cool move where Sue uses her force field to magnify Galactus's eye for Johnny, through which he blasts his flame directly into Galactus's eyes, amplifying his fire and increasing the accuracy, temporarily blinding Galactus, which they hope is long enough to swap out Franklin. Johnny brings the baby back to Herbie in the Baxter building, and I love how he gives Herbie a little head pat, similar to the one that he gave him earlier in the lab, that Herbie just always goes when he gets. Galactus pauses just before entering the bridge zone, smart enough to see that if these humans are just staring at him, waiting for him to step into whatever this thing is, it's probably a trap. Like, he may be kaiju sized, but he's not unintelligent. He locates Franklin, and then he turns back to sass them.
"Clever little bugs."
One remembers Loki saying, "An ant has no quarrel with the boot." Ben tries to stop Galactus with an oil truck that Johnny sets on fire, and then with a construction crane, but Galactus grabs the crane and flings Ben into the sky. Reed, meanwhile, grabs an antenna and slings up Galactus's body to open the holes on Galactus's back where the feeding tubes go, wedging them open to try to bleed him. I just love all the tactics that they use against Galactus. They're all kind of smart in their own way. But Galactus grabs Reed and stretches his body. There's a clear enjoyment Galactus takes in this. rips, like a psycho kid pulling wings off of a fly. I think it says something in this film where the most memorable use of a superhero's iconic power set is the moment that delivers excruciating pain. But Johnny caught Ben from space and they're back.
What time is it, Ben?
No.
What time is it, Ben?
No, Johnny.
Say it!
I don't wanna!
Say it!
And after resisting all movie long, Ben finally concedes, saying, "It's clobbering time!" And he forms a cannonball, like when he did when he jumped into the river, and that bonk knocks Reed free. But Galactus arrives at the Baxter building, and we cut to inside where Herbie tries to distract Franklin with a lullaby. As Galactus looms into view from behind, Herbie gets scared and closes the blast shutters, but boom! Galactus's giant hand smashes in to grab Franklin, and he tells the baby,
"You are my salvation, my deliverance from this vicious hunger."
And then he turns and says, "Time to feed." Like, I love how they are not afraid of making Galactus such a comic book villain. Sue casts a force field larger than any she has ever cast before, which grabs Galactus and pushes him toward the bridge. I love the detail of Galactus's power cosmic lit eyes flickering as Sue pushes him, like she's causing him to glitch out. Ben knocks over a building that Galactus was trying to brace himself with. Reed stretches and slings up to recover Franklin, and we all breathe a sigh of relief. And finally, Galactus falls into the portal, and Sue collapses, letting out a final breath. Though Galactus comes back out in a death-saving throw, Johnny prepares to kamikaze, but Silver Surfer pushes him out of the way to push Galactus with some of the power cosmic that he lent to her, and they both go through the portal as it closes. I love the look on his face as she does this. It's kind of like,
"I wouldn't have expected you."
Now, where does Galactus go? I'm going to explore that in another video, but they must be in some distant corner of the universe without Galactus's world ship, which we think he needs to get around, and he might need to feed and to recharge himself. So we could be looking at a possibility where A, Galactus might soon starve, and B, there's still Galactus's giant world ship in Earth's orbit that Reed needs to figure out what to do with. Maybe dismantle it, maybe hide it in a black hole or something, or shrink it. Surely they have their own version of Pym-Tech, and we see Reed shrinking a villain that I think is Claw in the final credit cartoon sequence. Either way, I'm glad Galactus was left still alive because he should never die. He should be a forever threat, and he's gonna be back. Now, some have critiqued the CGI on baby Franklin in the scene as he reaches for Sue, but the reality is it is impossible to direct the action of a baby this age to do this for multiple takes with an actor who's not the baby's real mom. And for any of us who are around kids all the time, anytime there's like a baby in any scene, there's like a dozen things that we see in the scene that we just know are unrealistic. And I think people who are around kids have just gotten pretty good at suspending disbelief when babies are in scenes. And instead, we've learned how to latch on to the emotion of the moment. And there is just something so real and so honest about a baby freaking out and wanting to be in the arms of one particular parent. So Franklin uses his power cosmic to revive Sue. You can see a faint lavender glow on his hands, and Sue's eyes glow a vibrant purple as she gasps back to life. And Franklin claps, which is one of the first things babies learn how to do, and it's adorable. In our post-credit scene video, I theorized what's next for Franklin and him having the power cosmic, but that's probably a reason why Dr. Doom wants this kid. If Franklin can make someone not dead again, he's enough of a reality warper where he can reshape and construct a universe out of broken incursion fragments. Clues in the post-credit scene like the book titles, Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species, Mike McClintock's A Fly Went By, and a fictional title about Schrodinger's cat all point to Franklin still having that hunger and being an evolved mutant who can see the multiverse in a way no one else can. And that will be important as Franklin could be the 828 anchor being in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, who ends up rebooting the MCU into the mutant saga that comes after. The final scene takes us back to the Ted Gilbert Show, where Ted tries to reintroduce them as the Fantastic Five. I love how the stage assistant's live broadcast countdown mirrors the launch countdown from Act 1 of the film. Instead of the five being on the Beatles set, they're off down the hallway, passing a Roman soldier, and then struggle to put in the car seat. As the Fantastic Car zips away, it definitely passes both Timely Comics and Lee's books. Another reference to this universe's Jack Kirby and Stan Lee that we saw in The Office earlier, and we know now are toasting an approval to their characters finally done right. Nuff said. And while we're on this subject, I loved how the credits included Jack Kirby's quote, "No matter what kind of character you create or assume, a little of yourself must remain there," and a confirmation of his birthday inspiring the Universe 828 number. Jack Kirby was arguably just as important as Stan Lee to these characters, and I'm glad this film gave him his due. Now, we go into the implications of the post-credit scene with Dr. Doom in our other video, and depending on when you're watching this video, we may have already updated the packaging on that post-credit scene video to include images that you might consider to be spoilers. We get get a lot of feedback about New Rockstars policy on this kind of thing, which I've talked about a lot on our subreddit, but I finally laid out our full rationale and our history with this in an episode of our Danger Room podcast that's coming Monday, July 28th through our NR Underground audio service. If you're able to support us doing that kind of shop talk, please consider subscribing to NR Underground by clicking the link in the description. Comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Frederick Price, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at EA Voss and subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.